welcome to Real Estate and You. I'm Gail Freeman, your realtor with Century 21 Woodland Realty in Flushing, Michigan. Today on the program we will have Douglas Weiland, which is from the Genesee Land Bank. And today we're going to be talking about the demolition grants that I know a lot of you have heard about, and also we'll be talking about the Michigan Blight Elimination Grants. So Doug's going to give us a lot of information that's going to be very beneficial to you as consumers. So please listen to what he has to say. But before we get started, Doug, I would like for you to give a little information about yourself.
Sure. My name is Doug Weiland. I'm the Executive Director of the Genesee County Land Bank. I've been in that position since 2008. And the Genesee County Land Bank deals with tax foreclosed properties. So most of what we do is take care of those properties where people don't pay the taxes and the properties are foreclosed. However, in recent years we've also been the organization that has handled a number of different grants, the Federal Neighborhood Stabilization Grant, and now Blight Elimination Grant and Hardest Hit Fund grants for demolition.
Okay, very good, Doug. Now, I know it's a lot of information today, so why don't we start out talking about your demolition grant and how that's going to benefit and help the county.
Okay, very good. We've recently received two different grants for blight elimination, and the first is the Michigan Blight Elimination Grant, and that is $3.7 million for demolitions within certain target areas, particularly in the city of Flint, a little bit outside, a little bit in Flint Township and a little bit in Mount Morris Township. The purpose of the Blight Elimination Grant is to increase public safety, it's to help stabilize property values, support economic development, and leverage local support and additional investment. That grant is $3.7 million, as I said. The second grant is a very large grant, and it's coming from what's called the Hardest Hit Fund. And this is for strategic demolition, but it is $20 million. It's actually $20.1 million. And that particular grant is for to help strategic demolition that'll encourage investment in or improvement of infrastructure or public parks, to stabilize tipping point neighborhoods, to take care of demolition along key corridors, including looking at where other investment of private and public funds has taken place, and where it's adjacent to recent other public investments. In the Michigan Blight Elimination Grant, we will be doing about 160 demolitions, and of those, about 22 will be commercial demolition. The Hardest Hit Fund, we can only do residential demolition, and those particular funds will take care of something in the order of 1,600 demolitions, and those will be primarily in the city of Flint, but they'll also be funding another 118 in Mount Morris Township, Genesee Township, Flint Township, and the city of Burton.
Now, Doug, I know you've spoken about the hardest hit, or even the blight elimination. How does someone get involved or find out what this list is about, and how can they be, if it's a house next door to them that they feel needs to be in this demolition, how do they go about and find that out?
Well, sure. The easiest way is for people to check our website. We have all the demolitions that are going to be done posted on our website. That is www.thelandbank.org. It's www.thelandbank.org. And we post on that our newsletters, as well as if they look under funded demolitions, they'll find a list of different information that's there, including a list of all the properties that will be demolished.
Okay, now I know you're saying the website, but if they can't use the computer or something like that, can they come down to your office and pick up a list?
They can come down to the office and get a list, although it's much easier really if they check the website.
The website, so they can even go to the library if they have to use a computer.
Yes, that's correct.
Fantastic. Okay, well, it's good information that we're knowing basically about the Hard Hit Fund and your blight elimination. Now, the criterias that to determine what buildings are going to be demolished, what's some of the criterias?
Sure. First, you have to realize that there are an awful lot of demolitions that need to be done. This funding, while it's a lot of money, isn't enough to take down everything that ought to go. We have a list of about over 4,000 blighted structures that are either city or land bank owned properties that ought to be demolished. So with the hardest hit fund and the Michigan Blight Elimination Grant, both totaling about 1,800 properties to demolish in the city, we had to have some criteria. So some of that criteria was to look at properties that are along major highways and corridors, areas that we call tipping point neighborhoods. These are neighborhoods that are kind of on a tipping point where they could slip into blight but are still pretty good, or if they get some help with the demolition, they will stay out of being having more blight. So tipping point neighborhoods are those areas that have the highest taxable values, and are those neighborhoods in the city of Flint that are still the most populated. So those are our criteria to get any blight in those areas out. Next, we have areas that we call buffer areas that kind of buffer the tipping point neighborhoods from those areas that are very blighted already. And the theory being that if we stop blight, stem the blight in these buffer areas, that it'll help maintain the tipping point areas and improve the buffer areas. We then also looked at key corridors. And these key corridors are streets like Saginaw Street, Martin Luther King, Pearson, Pasadena, that pass east, west, north, south through the city and have an awful lot of traffic.
Oh, fantastic. Now this is good information, because a lot of people don't understand what land bank's doing. And they've heard about this elimination grant and the hardest hit grants, but they're saying, well, what are they doing about it? Because we see all these houses as we go up and down the street that's blight. So what is one of the biggest problems you think blight is as far as Flint?
Well, one of the biggest problems with blight is that it encourages crime and it reduces property values. If you have blighted properties, you're in the real estate business, nobody wants to buy a house that's next to a vacant blighted property. So it really has a very negative effect on both the neighborhood, how people live, the quality of their life, and on real estate values, and on having a lot of influence on where people actually want to live.
You know, we say that, say for instance, I'm living next door to a house that I feel that is blighted, a blight problem. Now, can I contact your office and say, what are you going to do about this house, or can we have you check it out? How would you handle that as a consumer? When I see a house within my block and that I feel that's a problem and nobody's come and tagged it or anything like that, what can I do as a consumer pertaining to that?
Well, people can call our office and talk to us about the house, but I have to tell them ahead of time, there's a lot of property we're not going to be able to demolish that really needs to be. And for one thing, we're taking down houses that are owned by the land bank or owned by the city or public entities. We're not taking down every privately owned house that needs to be demolished. That's really the responsibility of the property owner. So most of these houses that are blighted, you're going to find today, are owned by private sources, and we cannot take those houses down. So that's a real disappointment for people, and we understand that. People can call and check, or check our website again to see if a house is on the list to be demolished, and that's probably the best thing for them to do. If they still have questions after that, they can call our office, and our office number is 257-3088. That's 257-3088.
Okay, make sure you jot that down, 257-3088, and that is the land bank's office if you have questions pertaining to the blight or any questions that might pertain to land bank, and they'll be glad to assist you with that. Now, as far as the demolition of the buildings, what type of cost is involved in that?
Yeah, good question. Our average cost over the last several years, where we've demolished maybe 1,000 houses, has been about $10,600 per demolition. Now, that's an average. We can have some houses that cost far more than that to demolish, and others that cost far less, or a large commercial building that might cost $100,000 or more. So the average really is kind of a measure, but it's a pretty broad measure, because we've had houses go down for as low as $5,000 and others that have gone for $20,000, $25,000. But $10,600 is what our average has been. During the course of the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, which is a program operating in 12 different cities around the state, their average cost of demolition around the state was about $12,000, Ours was $10,600, so we've been pretty cost effective at getting houses down.
Okay, so we're looking at an average of $10,600 for demolition of a single home.
Yep.
And it could go a little higher depending on the house, or less depending on the facility.
Yes, a lot of that will have to do with what kind of environmental remediation has to be done. To give you an idea, a house that has plaster ceilings and plaster walls that are embedded with asbestos are very, very expensive to remediate. These are the kind of houses that people have to go in with spacesuits and remediate them, take all the plaster out by hand and get it under control, and then take it to a Class 2 landfill that'll accept asbestos-containing material. Some of those houses we've had cost as high as $15,000 to $20,000 just for the environmental remediation. If a house doesn't have a lot of asbestos in it, maybe has just a little bit of asbestos wrap around pipes in the basement, that can be done much, much more cost effectively.
Oh, okay. Now, Doug, let's talk a little more about what's involving around the demolition again.
Yeah.
Let's touch bases on that a little more, please.
Yeah, good question. There's a lot of steps that go into doing a demolition. You don't just call somebody up and say, knock this house down. There are a lot of steps that have to be taken before you get that far. The first thing is that there are inspections that have to be done of the property and environmental surveys that have to be done. These are done by environmental consultants who can go in and tell us what kind of hazardous materials or what kind of asbestos-containing materials may have to be removed. Then we have costs and steps involved in the abatement and disposal of hazardous material. The first step, just the inspection, can cost anywhere from $300 to $600. The second step, actually remediating it, can be anything from nothing or close to nothing on up to $15,000 or occasionally more. There's utility cuts that have to be done. The electricity and gas have to be cut and plugged by Consumers Energy, and the City of Flint has to come out and cut the water, or outside the City of Flint, whatever entity is in charge of the water services or private contractors have to do that. In the City of Flint, those utility cuts cost us about $600 a piece. Then we actually have some governmental red tape that has to be done. Any kind of a contractor that does a demolition has to get a permit from the city or township where it's going to be, and that might be $75 to $350. Then there's the actual demolition. The structure is removed, and the basement and all the footings are removed, and those costs can range from $2,300 on up to about $25,000, depending on the size and the complications that are involved in the structure. After the structure is actually down, then the hole has to be filled with clean soil, and then there has to be some initial grading of the site to smooth over the hole. And then finally, there's a final grade that includes seeding and mulching over the top of the hole so that grass will grow and it will look nice afterward. So there's all these various steps that go into it. It's not just call up a contractor and take a house down. You have to do this in a very orderly fashion, and we have to work under different rules and regulations that are local, state, and federal because of the source of funding that we get.
So Doug, now going through this process, it sounds as if it would take them weeks or months to get maybe one house down. What type of time frame is it attached to all of these steps that we've just spoken of?
The Hardest Hit Fund and the Michigan Blight Elimination Grant, we're looking at about an 18-month period to take down around 2,000 properties. Now, 18 months sounds like it might be a lot of time, but with all these steps that go into it, they don't happen overnight. So right now, we've had a lot of preparation going in so that we can really ramp up and get the as many demolitions done in the shortest period of time. Now, this work is being done now even in winter. We have contractors that are looking at bids that we just released for about 100 houses that they'll be looking at taking down. We have to do this in a fashion, though, where with all these steps, we have to get the permits in place, we have to get the utility cuts done, we have to get the asbestos surveys done, we have to get the environmental remediation done before the demolition actually takes place.
So you have a lot of experts that's in on doing what has to be done. Everybody they're in their own lane. everybody knows this is your step, this is what you handle, and you go from there. Now, on the grants, I know you've gotten the money, but do you have a time factor that you have to complete these projects?
Yes, we're looking at spring of 2015, and we will get as much work done as we can by that time. You never know on these grants whether they'll be extended or not, but at this point, we're working under the assumption we have to have our work done by spring of 2015.
Fantastic. Now, is there something else that you might want to bring out to the consumers pertaining to the grants or land bank or any of the special programs that you have out there?
Yeah, there's a couple things that I think people sometimes get a little confused about. This particular grant, because of the criteria that we had to work with, we're hitting blight and demolition in areas where we have not done as much in the past. Let me give you an example. We're not going to be doing as many demolitions in the third ward as we have in the past, although there's still going to be a couple of hundred that are done there. But in past years, we've done 650 demolitions there. So what we're doing right now is covering areas that have not seen much activity for demolition in the past. Those areas that have the heaviest amount of demolition are also those areas where the fewest number of people live. So to maximize the impact on the public and to maximize the impact on property owners and people who are actually living in neighborhoods, we're doing much more demolition there where there's higher populations.
Are you able to speak about after you do the demolition in these areas and now you have just the land there? Mm-hmm. Do you have any goals of what you might be doing with that land? Are you going to try to build there, or what do you, any type of plan down the road?
Yeah, the first plan is to try to sell the property to next door neighbors. We have a side lot program that's very popular where people can buy a next door vacant lot for $25. That basically will allow somebody to double the amount of space that they have for living and improve their quality of life and improve the amount of space that they have for things like barbecues or gardens or children's swing sets or whatever they might want to use it for. And that is a very popular program. Mm-hmm. With the demolition being done in areas where there's more people living, we figure that most of these properties will be sold to next door neighbors. And that's a very, very good thing.
That's good to hear, because I've had a lot of people ask me about, properties next door to them, and I say, well, we'll look up and see who owns it, and then we can take, and some of them are land bank, and I ask that they give you a call down there to find out what the procedures are as far as applications or what they need to do to get that property. Now, say for instance, if there's a home next door to you, and you know that it belongs to land bank, and you know it's been cited that eventually it's going to come down, you're still saying that they can go on the website to see if they're on a list in the near future?
Yes, they can look at the list, and if the property is there and they're interested in it, then they should put in an application to buy the property. We have a lot of people right now, and it's interesting because even as the program's just getting started, we already have people who are calling and saying, I want that vacant lot once the demolition takes place. And now is the time for people to check and get applications in to buy those properties. Again, those side lots will sell for just $25 a piece.
Oh, okay, so the next door neighbor, that's the program.
The next door homeowner.
Homeowner. Okay, so if I have a lot in between two neighbors, mm-hmm. It's first come, first served?
Well, it's not necessarily first come, first served, because we'll do some homework and we'll take a look and see how those people take care of their own property. We don't want to sell a property to somebody who's not going to take care of it. And sometimes we'll have two different neighbors that both want a piece of property, and one does a very, very nice job of keeping their property up, and another one won't. And in that case, we'll sell the property to the person who does the best job of taking care of their own property.
So you'll make a determination by, like you say, evaluating what the homeowners are doing within their own community. Right. Very good. Now, is there another program or anything else that pertains to land bank that's going to be very beneficial to our consumers? Other than we've got the neighborhood, the next door, what is it, the next door?
Side lot program?
Yeah, side lot.
Yes, during the summer months we try to do as much weed and trash abatement as we can, but we simply do not have the resources that we need to go out and cut thousands of properties the way that they should. Keep in mind that in the city of Flint alone, there's about 20,000 vacant properties, about 12,000 vacant lots, and another 8,000 or so vacant homes. So at that point, during the summer, while we own maybe 8,000 properties, there's 20,000 that are out there. Most of them are still privately owned that need to be cut where nobody's paying attention to them. And that would cost about $5 million a year to take care of. We simply don't have those kinds of funds available. We do the best we can, but we ask people to be patient because we know we can't do as much as they really would like us to.
Very good, Doug. We're beginning to wind down here, and I just want to make sure that our consumers know the programs that you have out there at Genesee County Land Bank. And if you would, I would like for you to touch bases again on the blight elimination, the hard hit funds, and just talk about a little more of the demolition process so we make sure what's important to them, that they're going to catch that on the program.
Okay. Well, just to sum up, the Michigan Blight Elimination Grant is $3.7 million. That's going to allow us to take down about 180 properties, including about 20 commercial properties, some of which are very large. We've already taken down Carpenter Road Apartments, which was 3 very large abandoned apartment buildings. And in Flint Township, we've taken down 6 buildings at the former Brookstone Apartments. Those were very large projects. The hardest hit fund is $20.1 million. That's going to allow us to take down about 1,800 properties. Over 1,600 of those are in the city of Flint. But in that program, we're also going to be doing 118 outside the city of Flint in Mount Morris Township, Genesee Township, City of Burton, and Flint Township. All of these programs are on a reimbursement basis. Nobody has just handed us $20 million. We have to front the cost and then be submitting all the invoices and bills to the state, and then we're reimbursed after that. So there's a lot of red tape and a lot of requirements that we have to go through to be reimbursed. The demolition process itself, as I've described, is kind of complicated. There's a lot of steps that go into it. Those steps have to be followed so that the work is done properly and legally according to local, state, and federal requirements. Gail, just one other thing I'd like to mention, and that's that we coordinate our activities with the City of Flint and with their planning staff, and we've been meeting with them regularly on an every other week basis where we sit down and review the work that we're doing, what the City of Flint needs, and what works with respect to the city's new master plans.
Thank you, Doug, for the wrap up on that. We're winding down to the end of our program, and I'd just like to thank Genesee County Land Bank, Doug, for coming out, explaining to our consumers what our elimination grant is doing for us, how they're handling the funds, and also the hardest hit fund. Because a lot of times we have you asking these questions to the realtors and we don't know. So we feel if we get an expert on the show to tell you what you need to know, then everybody will understand the process. If you have any questions pertaining to the show or pertaining to anything that Land Bank has spoken on today, give me a call at 810-423-8391. I will get it to the expert and they will be able to contact you and let you know what is needed. Also, you will be able to call Land Bank at 257-3088. 257-3088, and they will be glad to answer any questions that you might have. And I want to say again, thank you for looking at Real Estate and You today.